Good morning, everyone. And of course, I would like to thank you so much for the responses that we have gotten on the video that I did in regards to dealing with racism in Trinidad and Tobago. But I was unaware of the noise emanating from the bracket. I installed this new bracket on my windscreen. And what happened is that, unfortunately, there was some noise emanating from the brackets, and the video didn't come out clearly. And for those of you who are watching right now, please let me know if you're hearing a lot clearer, because I want this message to come across. So if you could just send a message and tell me that you're hearing clearly so that I can continue, because I want to reiterate the points that I raised before, and I want to be able to do it clearly. Also, I want you to share this video and share it widely, because quite frankly, people are afraid of the truth. And this is what I did with the last video. Of course, I shook some feathers, and people, you know, people started to target me and text me a set of nasty messages. But I want to reiterate. Let me start off. My family basically, you're talking about 14 children. My mother had 14 children. And all of us grew up in a fairly comfortable home. We were not rich, we were not poor. And our parents would sacrifice to give us everything that we had. I grew up in Bamboo number 2. And Bamboo number 2 at that point in time was 99.9% Indian. In fact, if you saw an African person, it would be that person would probably come in just to buy parts. In fact, the large majority of people coming into Bamboo right now are people of African descent. If you see the amount of people, I'm not saying that we did a survey, but the fact is that you would know this from your customer base. But growing up in Bamboo, it led you to believe that, you know, Indianism was it. And what happened is that, and this is in no way the fault of the people in Bamboo number 2, but basically you grew up in a community where you only had Indians. So all you saw was only Indians. The people that you played football with was Indians. But what really changed my view on the African community and, you know, more or less building relationships was the fact that I went to Tunapuna Government Sec. And for those of you who know Tunapuna Government Sec, a lot of the people in Tunapuna Government Sec came from Arima, came from Maloney, La Hoketa, came from Tunapuna, El Dorado. So therefore you had a nice mix of people. You had people from, you know, who are Africans, Indians, etc. And this added to the whole camaraderie which was needed. And one of the things that I found while growing up and basically dealing with the politics was that with the UNC, when you look at what you consider their core values, sadly their core values was Indianism. It was based along the whole Indian mantra that Indians must be in charge, Indians must be in control. And I am not saying that. Their followers are saying that. In fact, you will hear from people like Melissa and others how they believe that Indians are the ones that control everything. We control the land, we control the business, we control everything. It's as if African people own nothing. It's as if African people are literally the dirt on the ground. And by looking at some of the posts, I wonder how come it is these religious leaders don't stand against these posts. Or have you ever seen or heard people from the UNC actually telling their followers, look, we don't want that? You know why? Because they support it. Many of them do. The majority support it. As I told you before, I was inside, so I know. And I will repeat, when you have 30-year-old boys getting $100 million contracts, it's not because they're qualified, you know. It is because these young boys are Indians. They are Indians. And as I said before in the last video, which was not too clear with the audio, when you look at the last 10 contractors under the previous government, watch the ages of these young boys, and you will see one 26 years old who received a contract for $75 million. You will hear about one contractor who is 30-something years old who got a contract for who got contracts to the value of $800 million. And the reason these contracts were given, it was simply because these people fell within the right ethnicity. How many of you remember when Dr. Rowley went to the Nagar? And this is in no way the fault of the Nagar, because I consider the Nagar, you know, those people who are there at the Nagar, these people are people who quite frankly try to encompass everybody. But do you remember when Dr. Rowley went there and Kamala and the rest of them made fun of the fact that he had on a kurta? And that is the problem. Many of the Indians believe that the kurta belonged to them, the shalwar belonged to them. But on Indian arrival day, right? On Indian arrival day, so many Africans, when you go to the banks, you see them dressed in Indian wear. You see them dressed in Indian wear at the food courts. But the Indians, on the other hand, they feel as if they wear the dashiki, if they wear African garb, it is an insult to them. Not all. Some. But not only that, when you look at the marriage and the issue of marriage within Africans and Indians, you will see that the African community and the Indian community, the African community wholeheartedly accepts the Indian as their in-laws. And the majority of Indians treat the Africans as outlaws. And believe me, I have seen cases where cutlass have been pulled when young ladies would bring home an African man into an Indian home. And as I said yesterday, one of the most racist men in Trinidad and Tobago, we all know who he is. His own daughter committed suicide after she brought home an African. So when you look at this whole issue and you look at the food and you look at what we join together and we become, you know, we try to unite on the food, you see that the Indian people, the majority of Indian people, I would go so far as to say, they would not go and support an African person. If the African person is behind the counter, they will not go, because a vast majority scorn the African people. And I want them to tell me I lie. But what happens to the roti shops owned by Indians? Do you see Africans turning away or looking at, oh, look at Indian own that place, I'm not going there? You don't see that at all. The African man will go and he will buy and he will buy. We despise the African man, but we don't despise their money. My dear friends, when you look at what is taking place in Trinidad and Tobago with racism, we cannot continue to allow it. Because our children, they are going to learn from it. And our children, they're going to believe that this is the way it should be. But when you have big hardback donkeys who are supposed to know better, promoting racism as part of their very political ideology, how the hell you expect it to go away? When you have ministers being interviewed by me, and when you interview that minister and you say, Minister, what would you do if your daughter married an African? And the minister refused to answer. And then you have ministers saying, I am not racist, my maid is an African. And sadly, the same people who are being targeted, the same people who are being castigated, the same people who are being pushed aside are the same people running for the crumbs. I have so many African friends that I cannot count. But the reality of it is that in Trinidad and Tobago, there's a mix of so many different people, but just now the Chinese will overtake us. Just now we will have more Chinese than Indians and Africans, so therefore we may not have the polarization again, although the Chinese, 90% of them may be illegal. So let us get our act straight, my dear friends. Let us try and see how we could take this away. Because if something were to happen to Trinidad and Tobago, are we going to say that we are not going to help the African or the Indians? Look, recently, there was an earthquake in Haiti. And our organization, the Baraka Foundation, with the San Fernando City Corporation and the present minister, arranged close to 10 to 12 containers. In fact, almost 8 containers were collected right by us in Chaguanas. And the people who gave were Africans, were Indians, were people of all different backgrounds. And they gave to the African community in Haiti. And that wasn't a problem. And those are the Indians who will come here and not have a shred of hatred in their hearts. But they are Indians who reside in Trinidad and Tobago. They would prefer to see that the African man in Haiti dead. I am an Indian. And I could tell you how it is. I could tell you how sickening it is. And for every 100 nasty posts from someone from the Indian ethnicity, you get 1 from the African community. And that ain't no joke. That is fact. And if perchance you see an African, and by the way, yes, there are Africans who are racist too, let us not deny that. But the fact is that many of the responses come from the African community after some Indian decide to post something dotish. Like, for example, African people don't own house, they wouldn't be paying property tax. They are a bunch of louse. And that is what you get. All of a sudden, the pastor's daughter, Melissa, her page is, I don't know where it is now, after making a set of dotish comments and pointing it in a particular direction. My dear friends, as I end here now, I want you to share this. I want you to send this throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And let us understand where we are heading and where we need to stop. And the people who continue to promote this dotish, this idiotic ideology that we must have racism in our very core, tell them go to hell. And the day that the children need life-saving surgery or need blood, I want them to go and get O positive Indian blood, A positive Indian blood. I want them to go and say that the doctor who must save my daughter's life is an Indian. And believe it or not, there are a few who would actually do that. They are that sick. They are that sick. Some of them, if, for example, if their daughter said, Daddy, I like this African boy or this African girl, they would prefer that their daughter dead than to marry an African. I remember there was one time I had this big confrontation in my office. A man came in my office, he said, Sean, how the hell you could support the PNM? The PNM is a NIGG party. I said, partner, what would you do if your daughter married an African? He said, boy, I go kill she, boy. He said, I go kill she. I said, I do not want your money. Get out of my blasted office now. The man looked at me and he said, but you is a so-and-so lover, a N lover. You're N this and you're N that. And he started to curse and insult. I asked my right hand to escort him out. Because I do not want even the money from you to support my business if you're that sick. So God bless you. God bless your children. Because in Trinidad and Tobago, we need to come together as a people and make a difference. All I ask is that you share this video to all your friends and to all your family. And to those who are racist, go to hell. We have no place for you here in Trinidad and Tobago because it's time we start to heal. It's time we start to come together now, and it's time we really start to make the difference here now. Take care. And of course, a little later on, I want to touch on something via live video with the immigration issues. But as you go around Trinidad and Tobago today, I want you to go to the breakfast shed and see how many Indians support the breakfast shed. I want you to go to the roti shops and see how many Indians there are and Africans there are. I want you to go to the crab and callaloo place or to the corn soup lady and see how many Indians line up. My dear friends, I am Indian, and I'm ashamed that, you know, this is something that we promote and this is something that we support. But when I say the we, I speak of it with a broad brush, but definitely not me. Definitely not me, because I'm not interested in that. I am never interested in that. God bless you. Take care. And of course, like I said, share it, and let us send this message.